following segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. $1 million a day. $1 million a day. That is how much the state of Washington is spending on just one effort to try to save and restore Washington state's salmon population. Now look, I love the salmon. I love salmon fishing. I love the environment. I think we all do. I think we all understand the need to protect and make sure that this wonderful resource is available for generations to come. But one of the challenges about this particular project is not only is it insanely expensive, I mean, costs that are almost difficult to wrap your mind around, but simultaneously, it's not working. And that's not coming from me. That's coming from the Seattle Times. So the Seattle Times did this entire investigative report. I encourage you to read it. It came out over the weekend about what they call the costliest salmon recovery program in Washington. And they give a little background here because some of this is mandated by a court for the state of Washington to do. It says, in 2013, a federal judge sided with 21 Western Washington tribes who argued the salmon blocking culverts violated their treaty fishing rights. The judge issued an injunction ordering the State Department of Transportation to replace its salmon barriers blocking habitat by 2030. Culverts have been used for decades, and if designed properly, they allow fish to pass through without problems. But others are too steep, too narrow, or have other flaws. Nearly 80 years ago, the state attorney general found that fish-blocking culverts violated state law. The Seattle Times analyzed the state's own project reports and found that for every barrier the state removes on a waterway, 9 others upstream and 2 downstream partially or fully blocked fish migration. Most of those other barriers are not scheduled to be removed. The latest estimate for all this construction has basically doubled from $3.8 billion to as much as $7.8 billion, roughly the cost of replacing the Highway 99 viaduct along Seattle's waterfront twice over, plus change, or you could buy 2 new electric ferry fleets. So to put that in layman's terms, you've got this court order that says, hey, the way that some of these culverts are designed by the state and Washington State Department of Transportation is not allowing for fish migration. So you've got to go in by 2030 and you have to remove them, change them, update them, upgrade them. The problem is that WashDOT has to do that to certain culverts, but you might have upstream other obstacles that the state is not going to and is not required to remove, so the state's not concerning themselves with those obstacles. So they could spend $100 million removing this set of obstacles for the salmon. And they know that just a short way upstream, those salmon are going to hit another obstacle that they're not going to be able to get over. So you're dumping hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, into fixing culverts when you know it won't actually fix the problem. More on this Seattle Times investigation. Again, removing WA salmon barriers surges to $1 million a day, but even the Times admits results are murky. It says WashDOT and Governor Inslee's administration aren't factoring in, because the court order doesn't require it, the countless other culverts owned by municipalities, railroads, homeowners, and others that block salmon migration. In some cases, the work has restored good salmon habitat, but in many others, WashDOT and the Inslee administration have narrowly focused on fulfilling the terms of the court order and haven't seized opportunities to prevent their investments from being ineffective or even worthless. Now the state needs $3.5 billion to $4 billion more than the legislature previously allocated, more than half of WashDOT's annual budget. But the doubling costs would buy a relatively small amount of habitat and require construction on Interstate 5, I-90, and other major highways. So not only are they spending money on projects that cost twice what it cost us to remove the Alaskan Way Viaduct and replace it with a deep bore tunnel, not only, as the Seattle Times said, could you buy 2 full new electric ferry fleets, but they need even more money, $3.5 billion to $4 billion more, half of WashDOT's full annual budget, to keep doing this work that even the Seattle Times acknowledges might be fruitless, because once you fix this, you're not fixing, and the state doesn't seem concerned with fixing, whatever else upstream might continue to impact the salmon. Now, one of the reasons why I believe the Seattle Times is doing this now, and I want you to be laser focused on it, is because the Climate Commitment Act could be repealed in November. Let me explain. One of the things that the money from the Climate Commitment Act is going to help fund is this court order and carrying out this court order, which, as we now know, is incredibly expensive, about $1 million a day. So what I believe this Seattle Times article is laying the groundwork for, if all the other arguments about repealing the CCA aren't landing, I mean, we've seen Mark Elias lying about all sorts of crazy stuff, about, if you take away our CCA money, we won't be able to fix the roads, we won't be able to fix the bridges, all of these things. Well, if those lies are just so crazy that people aren't going to believe them, what they're now going to turn to and hope to appeal to progressive voters on are the salmon. They're going to say, hey, we've got this court order and we've got to carry it out to save the salmon. And the CCA money is helping us do that. And if you repeal the CCA, then not only are we going to lose money that's helping us follow through with the court order, but the salmon are going to die and future generations won't have them. What they won't tell you is what they're already doing is, according to the Times, probably fruitless. So they know that they're dumping billions of dollars into an effort that is not making much of a difference. But they want that money to continue to come in anyway. So rather than, say, hey, we have this court order that we have to live up to, so we're replacing these culverts, but at the same time, if we replace these culverts, but we don't fix all the issues further upstream, then this is going to be fruitless, so we better do that too, if the goal is really saving the salmon. But given the Seattle Times report, and I would argue that the goal is not saving the salmon, it's either simply checking off boxes to make sure they're in compliance with a court order, or it's continuing to be able to have leverage to get billions of dollars from taxpayers who also want to save the salmon. Or it's a combination of the two. Let's use the court order as leverage to continue to get billions of dollars from taxpayers that we can shovel out to our political cronies and our allies. And at the end of the day, 20 years from now, they'll realize that it didn't save the salmon anyway, but by then we'll be cushy in retirement. $1 million a day for a project to save the salmon that's not actually saving the salmon. The state of Washington's government in a nutshell.